So where do I even start? I guess the real mess began with the arguments. Typical married stuff, bickering about money. Every couple argues about finances, don't they? But with Ava, it went beyond not having enough to get by. It was like she craved more, way more than I could ever possibly provide. We weren't poor by any means, but we weren't exactly living large either. I've got a steady job, not flashy, just enough to cover the bills. At least it used to be enough. But Ava? She wanted the kind of life we'd see in those fancy TV shows. Upscale dinners, designer outfits, the whole 9 yards. Back when we first met, she wasn't like this. She was just normal. We actually had fun together. But as time passed, she slowly transformed, becoming someone I could hardly recognize. The fight started out small. Questions like why we couldn't afford a vacation or why we were still stuck with the same old car. But things escalated, and pretty soon, there were nights we barely spoke. When we did talk, she seemed perpetually irritated, and I was left feeling like I just didn't measure up. And then one day, the arguing stopped. For a second, I thought it was a good sign, like maybe we were finally moving forward. But something felt off. Ava quit nagging me about money, yet she started bringing home things I knew we couldn't afford. It started with this designer handbag, some fancy brand I'd never heard of, but I could tell it was pricey. When I asked where she bought it, she just brushed me off, saying it was on sale practically for nothing. I felt uneasy, but I let it slide. I was just so worn out, man. Tired of all the back and forth, of constantly being at odds. But it didn't stop there. Next, it was jewelry, then a new phone. All stuff way beyond our budget. Every time I brought it up, she had an excuse ready, sales, knockoffs, whatever. I tried convincing myself that maybe she'd just lucked out with some incredible bargains. But deep down, I knew something wasn't right. Our talks about money were non-existent, like they'd vanished overnight. Still, I couldn't shake the strange feeling creeping over me. She was always on her phone, smiling at messages I never saw. If I asked who it was, she'd say, "Oh, just Saren or a friend from work." She'd brush me off, treating me like some clueless guy who wouldn't understand. At first, it was subtle, the way she'd angle her body away when texting or how her voice changed for certain calls. I told myself not to overthink it. Maybe I was too distrustful. After all, things between us weren't terrible. They just weren't the same. You ignore the warning signs, don't you? It's easier to look the other way than face the truth. But man, looking back now, I realize I was completely blind. Work stayed the same as always, dull but steady. I'm not usually the kind of guy to complain, but during lunch, some of us would gripe about our marriages. Mike, a guy from accounting, would rant about how his wife had maxed out their credit card on another new appliance, and everyone would roll their eyes in sympathy. We all had our tales about money struggles or wives wanting things we couldn't afford. It was relatable, at least for me, but lately I found myself saying less. Not because I had nothing to add, but because I didn't want to admit that things were shaky at home. The more Ava pulled away, the more I tried to pretend nothing was wrong. One day, Mike talked about how he and his wife had started seeing a therapist over money issues. I felt this uncomfortable pang because I knew deep down that maybe I should have been doing the same. But I just nodded along, pretending everything was fine at home. Foolish, right? I should have seen it earlier. As time went on, Ava's distance only grew. It wasn't just the pricey stuff or her secrecy around her phone. Her attitude had shifted. She seemed lost in her own world, like she wasn't even present when we were together. Our conversations were shallow, barely scratching the surface. I'd ask about her day, and she'd answer with these short, dismissive replies, like she couldn't be bothered. Hell, she barely even looked at me anymore. Not that things were amazing before, but now it was like she couldn't stand the sight of me. One night, I tried to get close to her, thinking maybe we just needed some time together. But she pulled away, saying she was tired. The way she said it, though, it was different, cold and distant. That's when it hit me. She wasn't just tired. She was checked out, emotionally gone. But here's the kicker. She wasn't burned out on life. She had plenty of energy for her friends and her nights out. It was only me she had no time for. I'd watch her get dressed up, looking like she was off to some high-end club, while I sat there in my worn jeans and hoodie, wondering what happened to the woman I married. The worst part? I ignored it, kept telling myself it was just a phase, that maybe she was stressed or going through something. I even started blaming myself, thinking I wasn't doing enough, wasn't making her feel loved. So I started trying harder, doing more around the house, planning simple date nights. Nothing extravagant, of course, since we couldn't afford it. But no matter what I did, it was never enough. Then, one day, she came home with this brand new phone. I knew we couldn't afford it, so I half joked, "What? Did you rob a bank?" She just laughed and shrugged it off. "Got it on a great deal," she said. That's when I knew something was really wrong. That was the moment I couldn't keep lying to myself anymore. I started paying closer attention to everything. Her phone, her clothes, the way she carried herself. She changed completely, and I had no idea why. But I was determined to find out. You know that gut feeling when things don't add up? It's like a nagging voice in the back of your head you try to ignore, but eventually, it's all you can think about. That was me, weeks after finally admitting to myself that Ava wasn't the woman I'd married. I couldn't shake the feeling, the odd changes in her behavior, the new expensive stuff she flaunted. I didn't have proof, just that gnawing sense that something was off. Then, the moment hit, the one I couldn't brush aside. It was a Saturday morning. Ava told me she was going out for coffee with Saren, one of her so-called close friends. Seemed innocent enough, right? I wasn't trying to play the paranoid husband, but I couldn't shake this restless feeling. That designer bag she brought home a few weeks back kept bugging me. She'd claimed it was just a cheap knockoff from some sale, but every time I looked at it, her story felt flimsier. I mean, I wouldn't know a high-end designer bag from a knockoff on the street, but this one didn't feel cheap. It looked expensive, too expensive. And for someone who said we were barely scraping by, Ava sure was showing off a lot of high-priced stuff lately. So there I was, sitting on the couch, just staring at that damn bag for what felt like hours. I knew I shouldn't, but I had to get to the bottom of this. My fingers practically itched to grab it and figure out if I was just losing my mind. So, I picked it up, turned it over, and decided to check the internet. Maybe there was some trick to tell if it was real or fake. After a few minutes of searching, I found some tips on spotting knockoffs. I compared everything, stitching, logo, even the zipper and other tiny details. And then, like a punch straight to my gut, it hit me. This bag was authentic. The real thing. A genuine designer piece worth more than what we had in our savings account. We couldn't afford this. Not this bag, not half the stuff she'd been flashing around lately. My stomach churned, and my heart sank. She'd lied to me. I don't even know why I reacted like I did, but my fingers fumbled to call her. My heart was hammering, my nerves shot, but she didn't answer. Big surprise. I tried again, nothing. Panic crept in, and sweat started pooling on my forehead. Where the hell was she if she wasn't with Saren like she'd claimed? That's when I decided to call Saren directly. I don't know why I thought she'd cover for Ava, but I needed to know. Saren answered casually, like everything was perfectly normal. "Hey, Saren," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Just checking. Are you and Ava still out for coffee?" There was this pause, just long enough to make my stomach drop. "Coffee?" Saren said, sounding confused. "I'm at home, Jameson. I wasn't planning to meet up with Ava today." Her words hit me like a brick to the face. I was gripping the phone so tightly, I thought I might crush it. I could barely say anything, muttering something about mixed-up plans before hanging up. My head was spinning. Where the hell was Ava? And why was she lying to me? I just sat there, staring at that damn bag, my mind racing. I was furious, but more than that, I felt utterly betrayed. I didn't want to believe it. Maybe there was some explanation, something crazy that would make sense. But deep down, I knew. I damn well knew. Something was going on, and it wasn't just about money. I couldn't confront her. Not yet. I needed more evidence, something concrete, before accusing her of anything. The rest of the day, I was a mess, barely able to think straight. Every time my phone buzzed, I'd jump, hoping it was her. But she didn't call. When she finally came home, it was late. She barely looked at me, just tossed her bag down and muttered that she was exhausted. No explanations, no excuses about where she'd been. I didn't press her. Not yet. I wasn't ready for that. So, like the idiot I was, I just nodded and let her head to bed without saying a word. But inside, my mind was going 100 miles an hour. I kept thinking about when we first got married. Back when we didn't have much, but at least we had each other. I thought that was enough. Or at least I thought it was for both of us. Now, though, I wondered if it ever had been enough for her. Looking back, I remembered our wedding day vividly. She looked like something out of a dream, and I thought I was the luckiest guy alive. Back then, we didn't care about money. We barely had enough to pay rent, but we were happy, or at least I was. Now I couldn't help but question if she ever felt the same, or if all this was just lying under the surface, waiting for the right moment to come out. Those memories only made the situation hurt more. I loved her, trusted her with everything, and now, I didn't even know what to think anymore. Every little thing she did felt suspicious. That night, lying in bed beside her, sleep was impossible. My mind kept running in circles around the lies, the excuses, the pricey stuff she kept bringing home. Was this really the same woman I married? Or had she been hiding this side of herself all along? The next morning, she brought home yet another phone, sleek and shiny, the kind of gadget we couldn't afford in a million years. I stared at it, feeling like it was proof, like it confirmed every suspicion I had. She noticed me looking and just shrugged, saying, "Got it on a great deal," her tone flat, as if this was the most normal thing in the world. I didn't respond. My mind screamed at me to demand answers, but I couldn't do it. Not yet. I needed more. I needed to be sure. That day, I decided I'd start watching. I'd find out where she was going, who she was with. The old me would have never done this, snooping around, questioning her like that. But I wasn't the same guy anymore. She turned me into someone filled with doubt instead of trust. Every bit of faith I had in her was gone, replaced with this gnawing suspicion I couldn't shake. I didn't know how far I'd go to uncover the truth, but I knew I couldn't stop now. The lies and secrecy were building, ready to boil over. The thought of finally confronting her made me sick. But what choice did I have? If I wanted to catch her, I had to be patient, had to be smart. Yet every day that passed, my doubt festered. The more I uncovered, the less I recognized the woman I thought I knew. And there I was, spiraling, sinking further into this pit of deception, expensive crap, and lies. Everything was piling up, and I couldn't shake the feeling that I was overlooking something massive. I didn't want to jump to conclusions, but it was pretty clear Ava was hiding something. The problem was, I had nothing solid to go on, just a gut feeling gnawing at me, driving me crazy. Late one night, lying next to her in bed, I finally made up my mind to check her phone. She had drifted off to sleep, and her phone was right there on the nightstand, almost taunting me. I felt like a jerk for even thinking about it, but what choice did I have? She'd lied to me more than once. And that thing with Saren, the fake coffee meetup, that had left my head spinning for days. I needed answers. My hand shook as I reached for her phone. The screen lit up, and my heart nearly stopped. Locked, and not with the usual passcode either. She'd changed it. Just like that, the password I knew was gone. I felt sick staring at the screen. Why would she change it? There was only one reason I could think of, to keep me out. I put the phone back down, doing my best to keep my frustration in check. Confronting her then and there would only get me another excuse, something to brush off my suspicions. She always had one lined up. So, I decided I'd play it smart, even though the waiting was killing me. I was going to follow her, to see where she was really going and figure out who the hell she was meeting. A few days later, I got my chance. Ava told me she was heading to work like usual, but the way she said it sounded too casual, too quick. I couldn't shake the feeling something was up. So, instead of heading to my own job, I stayed behind, waiting until she left the house. I kept my distance as I followed her down the street, making sure she wouldn't notice me. Usually, she'd head left toward the bus stop, but today, she turned right toward a taxi stand. My heart raced. Something was definitely off. She didn't even look toward her office. I hid behind a tree, watching as she climbed into a taxi, my pulse pounding in my ears. My mind was racing. I could either let it go, pretend I hadn't seen anything, or I could follow her and finally get the answers I needed. I don't know why I hesitated, but it felt like our entire marriage hinged on what I did next. I waved down the next cab I saw, barely able to keep my voice steady. "Follow that taxi," I told the driver, sounding like some washed-up character in a bad detective movie. He gave me a weird look but shrugged and started driving. My heart hammered in my chest. My hands clenched into fists as I watched Ava's taxi up ahead. I couldn't stop my mind from spiraling, jumping from one awful scenario to the next. Where was she going? What was she doing? And why did she have to lie about it? Was she meeting someone? Was she sneaking around behind my back? We followed her taxi across town, through streets I hardly recognized. After what felt like an eternity, though it was probably only about 10 minutes, her taxi stopped in front of a building I'd never seen. Just some rundown office building, the kind of place you'd pass without giving it a second thought. My chest tightened as I watched her step out of the cab and head toward the entrance. She didn't hesitate, didn't look around, just walked right in like she'd been there 100 times before. The driver glanced at me in the rearview mirror. "You want me to stop here?" he asked. "Yeah," I muttered, barely able to get the word out. I threw some cash at him, stepped out, and watched Ava disappear into the building, keeping just far enough behind so she wouldn't see me if she looked back. Standing across the street, my mind was reeling as I tried to piece things together. What could she possibly be doing here? And then, as if the universe wanted to rub salt in my wound, I saw him, Michael, her boss. He strolled up to the building like he owned the place, all smug and casual. I'd never liked the guy, but I sure as hell didn't expect to see him here. My stomach twisted in knots as I watched him head inside, right after Ava. I didn't know what to do. Part of me wanted to charge in there and confront them both, but I held back. I needed more. I needed to be sure. So I waited. I stood there long enough to realize neither of them was coming out anytime soon. Eventually, I turned to leave, feeling like I just watched my life fall apart in front of me. But I knew I wasn't done yet. I needed more proof before I made any moves. A few days later, I ran into one of Ava's old coworkers, Laura, while picking up some groceries. I hadn't planned to bring up Ava, but somehow, it just slipped out. "Hey, how's work going for Ava?" I asked casually. "I haven't seen much of her lately." Laura looked at me, confused. "Ava?" she said, raising an eyebrow. "She hasn't worked there for months." "I thought she told you." Her words hit me like ice. My blood went cold, my stomach dropped. Ava hadn't worked there for months? I could barely manage a response, stammering something lame like, "Oh, right. She must have just forgotten to mention it." But inside, I was screaming. For months, she'd been lying about going to work. As I left the store, my head was spinning. If she wasn't at work, where the hell was she going all this time? Everything started clicking into place, the designer bags, the expensive junk, the secret meetups. Ava had been leading a double life right under my nose, and I'd been too blind to see it. I walked around aimlessly after that, trying to clear my head, feeling like the loneliest guy on the planet. I watched other couples going about their lives, holding hands, laughing, and all I could think was how alone I felt, stuck in this mess. I wanted to scream, to confront her right then and there, but I knew I couldn't. Not yet. I still needed more. The lies had been piling up for who knows how long, maybe even years, and I was just now starting to scratch the surface. As much as I wanted to deny it, there was no hiding from the truth anymore. Ava wasn't just keeping secrets from me. She was living a whole other life right in front of my eyes, and I was going to find out exactly what that life was, no matter how much it cost me. After everything I'd seen, one thing was crystal clear. Michael was the key to all of this. He wasn't just Ava's boss anymore. He was something more. And if he was tangled up in this, I wondered if his wife, Wendy, was as clueless as I'd been. Finding her on social media took only a few clicks. There she was, grinning in pictures with Michael, looking like they had it all together. It made me sick, thinking she probably had no idea that her life was just as much of a lie as mine. I hovered over the message button, hesitating. What was I even supposed to say? "Hey, I think your husband is screwing my wife. Want to meet up?" But I had to know. I needed more information, so I typed out something simple, keeping it vague but direct. Hey, I need to talk to you. It's about Michael and Ava. Please, it's important. And before I could talk myself out of it, I hit send. To my surprise, she replied a couple of hours later. I hadn't expected her to respond so quickly, but the message was short, almost blunt. What is this about? There it was. No small talk, no beating around the bush. Meet me at the cafe on Broad Street tomorrow. 2 p.m. That was all she said. The next day, I showed up early, my nerves on edge. I hadn't told Ava where I was going. Lately, she'd been acting sweet, like nothing had changed between us. It was driving me insane. She had no idea I was onto her, and I had to keep it that way, at least for now. Wendy walked in a little after 2, looking like she'd just stepped out of a magazine. She was older than Ava but carried herself with this calm confidence that pulled you in. I wondered if Michael had any idea what kind of woman he was betraying. She spotted me right away and walked over, her eyes cold, sizing me up. She didn't even sit down at first, just looked at me like I was wasting her time. "What do you want?" she asked, skipping any kind of pleasantries. I took a deep breath and just said it. "I think Michael is having an affair with my wife." Her expression barely changed. It was as if I'd said nothing unusual. She raised an eyebrow and crossed her arms. "And why should I believe you?" Frustrated, I told her everything. How Ava had been lying for months, the designer bags, the secret meetups, the day I'd watched Michael walk into that building with her. I laid it all out, forcing myself to stay calm even though I was burning up inside. But she wasn't buying it. She shook her head, her tone dismissive. "I don't have time for this nonsense," she snapped. "You must be mistaken. Michael wouldn't do that." And just like that, she turned on her heel and left. My heart sank as I watched her go. I don't know why I'd expected her to believe me. Maybe because if the tables were turned, I'd want to know. But I guess it's different when you're the one hearing that your whole life might be a sham. That night, I went home angrier than ever. Ava was already there, acting like the perfect wife. I could barely look at her. Every time she smiled, every time she asked how my day had been, I wanted to scream, but I held it in. Not yet. Then, a few days later, I got a call. It was Wendy. Her voice sounded different this time, defeated. "Jameson," she said quietly. "I need to see you. You were right about Michael and Ava. Meet me at the bar on 8th. I showed up that evening, not knowing what to expect. When I walked in, I spotted her at the bar with a drink already in her hand. She looked exhausted, like she hadn't slept in days. I slid onto the stool next to her, and before I could say anything, she spoke, staring down at her glass. "I hired someone," she said, her voice steady but low. "A private investigator. Followed Michael for a week. And you were right. He's been meeting your wife. Regularly." Hearing it confirmed out loud felt like a knife twisting in my gut. Even though I'd already suspected it, having it validated hit me like a ton of bricks. I downed my drink in one go, but the burn did nothing to dull the pain. Wendy ordered another round, and before we knew it, we were both drinking far more than we should have. She opened up, sharing how she'd been ignoring her suspicions for months, brushing them off, convincing herself that Michael was just wrapped up in work. I told her about Ava's lies, the fake coffee dates, the ridiculous excuses. We were both sinking in the same wrecked boat, and for the first time in weeks, I didn't feel so alone. As we kept talking, our conversation turned more personal. We shared stories of how our marriages used to be, how things had once felt right. I told her about the Ava I'd fallen in love with, before she became this distant, unrecognizable stranger. Wendy spoke about how Michael had been her rock, her partner in everything, until, well, he wasn't. At some point, the alcohol blurred the lines between us. The sadness, anger, and betrayal all mixed together. And suddenly, it was just me and Wendy, two broken people leaning on each other in ways neither of us had planned. "I feel like such a fool," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "I thought we were happy. I thought he loved me." I didn't have any words that could ease her pain because, honestly, I was thinking the same damn thing. Instead, I reached out, my hand resting on hers. She looked at me with this quiet understanding, this shared pain. Maybe it was the alcohol, or maybe it was the sheer weight of everything we were going through. Before I knew it, we were kissing. It wasn't some grand, passionate moment. It was slow, hesitant, almost like we were testing if it was even okay to feel this way. But then, it became more intense, more desperate, both of us being pulled closer by the weight of our betrayals. We stumbled out into the night and found our way to her place. What happened next wasn't just physical. Sure, there was that side of it. Wendy was still beautiful, still had that undeniable magnetism. But it was deeper than that. We were both shattered, both wounded by the people we trusted the most. There was no hesitation as we undressed each other. It was raw, messy, filled with a strange kind of emotional intensity. For just a little while, we could forget about the people who'd broken our hearts and find comfort in each other. Afterward, we lay there in the dark, wrapped in a heavy silence that wasn't awkward. It was oddly comforting. We didn't say much, we didn't need to. This wasn't about love. It was about finding some connection that made the pain a little more bearable, some solace in the wreckage of our lives. When I finally left her place that night, I wasn't sure how I felt. Part of me felt guilty, like I'd sunk to Ava's level. But another part of me, I felt free, like I'd taken the first step in taking back my life from the chaos Ava had thrown it into. But deep down, I knew this was only the beginning. I woke up the next morning in a haze, the weight of everything that had happened pressing down on me. That night with Wendy wasn't something I regretted, but it wasn't something I could dwell on, either. It had been an escape, a way to let go of some of the anger and pain that had built up inside me for months. But now I had to face reality, and that reality was Ava. Wendy and I didn't talk much after that night, not right away. But before I'd left her place, she dropped a bombshell on me. Wendy wasn't just planning to leave Michael. She wanted to ruin him, to tear down everything he had built. Turns out, his entire business, all his success, was funded by her family's money. Without her support, he was nothing, and she was determined to make sure he ended up with exactly that, nothing. I couldn't lie. The idea of seeing Michael lose it all gave me a twisted sense of satisfaction. But first, I had to handle my own disaster. I had to confront Ava, and I had no idea how it was going to go. When I got home, Ava was on the couch, scrolling through her phone as if nothing had changed. She didn't even look up when I walked in, didn't acknowledge me at all, and it irritated me more than I could stand. I stopped and stared at her, wondering how I ended up here, stuck with a woman who clearly didn't care about me anymore. "I know about the affair," I said, my voice cutting through the silence like a knife. Ava's head snapped up, her eyes narrowing as she finally looked at me. But instead of guilt or fear, her expression twisted into something else. Amusement. She smirked, like this was all some big joke. "Oh, do you?" she replied, dripping with sarcasm. "Took you long enough. That was it." That mocking smirk, that sneering tone. I couldn't stand it another second. "I'm filing for divorce," I said, keeping my voice steady even though my heart was racing. "We're done." I expected her to get angry, maybe even upset. But instead, she laughed. Actually laughed. "You think I care?" she sneered, standing up and crossing her arms. "You think I need you? Michael's got more money than you'll ever see. I won't even notice you're gone." My blood boiled. I wanted to scream at her, to tell her how deluded she was, how she'd thrown away everything for a man who couldn't care less about her. But I stayed quiet, letting her gloat while knowing something she didn't. I kept my mouth shut, waiting for the moment when her little fantasy with Michael would come crashing down. And it did, much faster than either of us expected. Wendy wasn't messing around. Now that she had proof of Michael's affair, she went to work dismantling his life. Over the next few weeks, I watched from a distance as his business began to crumble. At first, it was just whispers about bad deals, suppliers cutting ties, clients ghosting him. But things quickly went from bad to worse. Ava, oblivious, kept parading around with her fancy new phone, her designer bags, still acting like she was untouchable. Every time I saw her, I had to resist the urge to throw it all in her face, to tell her that Michael wasn't going to be her ticket to luxury. But I waited. I wanted her to feel every inch of the fall when it hit. One night, she came home looking pale, her usual confidence gone. She looked like she'd seen a ghost. "What's wrong?" I asked, fighting to keep a smirk off my face. She didn't answer immediately. Instead, she sank onto the couch and buried her face in her hands. After a moment, she looked up, eyes wide with panic. "Michael's business. It's going under," she whispered, her voice shaky. "He says he's lost everything. He doesn't know what to do." Couldn't hold back. I laughed, but it wasn't kind. It was cold, bitter, filled with the satisfaction I'd been holding on to for months. "Guess he's not the savior you thought he was," I said, my voice laced with venom. Ava stared at me, speechless. For the first time in a long time, she looked lost, like her entire plan had unraveled, leaving her with nowhere to turn. "I thought," she stammered, tears pooling in her eyes. "You thought wrong." I cut in, my tone sharp. "You threw away everything for him, and now he's got nothing. And neither do you." That was the moment it all crumbled for her. Reality hit, and she realized she'd left me, mocked me, for a man who couldn't even keep his own life together. Her tears started to fall, and for a brief second, I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. But then I remembered the lies, the sneaking around, the humiliation. Any sympathy I might have had disappeared. "I'm leaving," I said, grabbing my jacket. "And when I get back, I want you gone. I don't care where you go, but you're not staying here." She didn't say a word, just sat there sobbing as I walked out the door. Meanwhile, Wendy was wrapping up her side of things. She left Michael, stripping him of every asset she could get her hands on. I don't know all the details, but whatever she did, it worked. Michael lost everything, his business, his house, his savings. He was left with nothing but the clothes on his back. And without Wendy's money, he didn't have a chance of recovering. From what I heard, he tried to keep things going with Ava for a while, but it didn't last. The moment he realized he couldn't keep up with her lifestyle, he bailed, leaving her stranded. Last I knew, Ava was living in a shabby apartment, barely scraping by. She called me a few times, begging for help, but I ignored her calls. Why would I help her? She'd made her choice, and now she had to live with it. I wouldn't say I was exactly happy, but I wasn't broken anymore either. Watching Ava's life fall apart didn't fix everything, but it did feel like karma had finally come around. I wasn't surprised when Ava started reaching out after Michael left her. At first, it was just phone calls, but soon, she started showing up at the house, looking desperate. One evening, she was sitting on the porch when I came home. She looked rough, like all that confidence had drained out of her. "Jameson, can we talk?" she asked, her voice shaky. I stood there for a moment, then said simply, "I don't know what you want, Ava. There's nothing left to talk about." She blinked, struggling to hold back tears. "I made a mistake," she whispered. "Michael, You thought wrong," I interrupted. "I'm filing for divorce. I don't care where you go, but you're not staying here." She tried to pull the same tricks as before, pleading that she still loved me, saying we could fix things. But I'd had enough. I saw right through her. "You don't need me, remember? Go find someone else to support you." And with that, I walked past her, leaving her and the years of her lies and manipulation behind. Once she was out of my life, I focused on what I wanted for the first time in years. I'd always dreamed of starting my own business, but Ava had always shot me down, making me feel like it was impossible. Now, with her out of the picture, I took the plunge. It was slow at first, but my home repair business began to grow, and before long, I was thriving in ways I'd never thought possible. A few months later, I met Megan. At first, she was just a client, but we hit it off, and eventually, it turned into something more. She was nothing like Ava. Megan was kind, grounded, and never made me feel like I wasn't enough. With her, I felt supported, not judged. For the first time, I saw what a healthy relationship could actually be. Looking back, I realized Ava had been holding me back for years, making me feel like I was constantly chasing some impossible dream just to keep her happy. But in the end, I was better off without her. Now I'm free to be who I am without the weight of her expectations dragging me down.